Hello there YouTube, my name is Rob and I love Stephen King. I have read so much of his work and I love all of it. Even the books that I accept aren't that good, there's still bits in them that are fantastic and I love. And recently I finished reading Dr. Sleep, the sequel to his much acclaimed The Shining. And in this video I'm gonna talk about it. Obviously. Things I liked, things I didn't like, and more importantly, does it stand up as a sequel to one of the best horror novels ever written, or should The Shining have been left alone to stand as one single fantastic book? And the answer for me to both questions is yeah, kind of. Dr. Sleep does live up to it as a sequel, but The Shining is also a fantastic book and is so very different from Dr. Sleep that some part of me thinks The Shining should have been left as a single masterpiece. Okay, so Dr. Sleep takes place 20 years after the ending of The Shining. In this time, Danny and Wendy have moved out, lived together, Danny has wound up with a drinking problem and Wendy has died. That is a lot of information to just skip past. But actually, it kind of works. The point is that Danny is this alcoholic and he moves across the country to different places so he can get a new job and live there for a bit before his drinking fucks it all up and he has to move on to somewhere else. He's an unreliable narrator who doesn't like to think about the past, and since he's the one telling the story, we only hear about his past when he decides to finally tell us. Now this works because if he told us everything about his life all at once, we wouldn't really support him that much because he's done some horrible things. But we slowly start to know him as a person living in this one place, and then as he slowly tells us the things he's done, we can forgive them one by one because we've grown to know and love him as a single person. So that part of the structure for me really works. What doesn't work is the rest of the structure. Everything else. The Shining was a very odd book. It was about this single family trapped alone in a hotel all winter. There was a few flashbacks to bring us some more information about their history and stuff, but for the most part it was just these three people trapped in one big house. And it gave it a very creepy claustrophobic feel. Dr. Sleep, however, is set all across America, with Danny moving from city to city after he fucks up his life in every different place. So immediately doesn't have that feeling. Plus, the actual story structure is just very plain, boring, standard. Again, to go back to The Shining, it's about the Overlook Hotel slowly taking over Jack Torrance's mind, driving him insane. Dr. Sleep, on the other hand, is about how Dan befriends this young girl who also has The Shining, and then there's these vampire-like creatures that feed on The Shining, and obviously they're the bad guys, and eventually the good guys and the bad guys meet, and there's a big old fight, and the bad guys die, and the good guys win, and everybody's happy. The story itself is quite interesting and enjoyable. The way it's told is not. Now, the characters are very interesting and well written, but I think King just has that knack of being able to write really interesting characters. Dan is obviously very well developed, and Abra, his young compadre, is relatively well fleshed out. She has emotional depth, and she has feelings, and she has reasons for doing the things that she wants to do. Some of the characters don't have a lot of screen time, and so end up being a bit one-dimensional. Abra's parents, for example, just have the one emotion of don't hurt my child. But in general, the characters are relatively believable and definitely enjoyable. Now, as I follow up to a horror novel, Dr. Sleep is definitely lighter on the horror and heavier on the fantastical elements, especially with the shining vampires, not that sort, and Abra's telekinetic shining abilities, things like that. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely some creepy elements in the book. Like when we learn about Halloran's abusive uncle, that is an incredibly uncomfortable scene, but is very powerful. But in general, the rest of the book has quite a lighter tone to it. The other big issue in the book is the ending. Now, as much as I say I love Stephen King, he does have a problem with some of his bigger books. Things like Dreamcatcher, Desperation, and Needful Things, all relatively big books. So they have a lot of time to be able to develop characters and create this world that you're being a part of, and it's all amazing. And then it gets to the end, and King doesn't seem to know where he wants to go with it, so either just has a really boring, very quick ending, or just goes full on out with weird and wonderful endings that don't make any sense whatsoever and leave you going, what? Now, Dr. Sleep has the first problem in that the ending is just so obvious going to happen. It isn't the worst ending, not by a long shot, it's just a bit dull. There's a relatively predictable twist, and the big fight at the end, the bad people die and the good people don't, and everybody's happy and they go away. It's all a little bit, well, yeah, I could see that coming. Now, I'll admit I've been relatively negative in this video, but actually I did really enjoy the book. It's brilliant just to see what happens to Danny from The Shining, the character that we grew to know and love. The one who outwits the hotel itself. It's fun to see him grow up and deal with the problems of everything that happened to him as a kid and having this alcoholic, abusive father and how he tries to get over it. It's very interesting in the way it deals with those problems. And to be fair, Dr. Sleep shouldn't entirely be judged just as a sequel to The Shining. It is its own book and it should be judged, at least in part, on its own merits. There's even a note from King himself at the end of the novel explaining that this isn't The Shining, this is Dr. Sleep. The Shining was written like 40 years ago by, in his own words, a well-meaning alcoholic. Now the things that King writes now are going to be so different from what he wrote back then because he's a different person, he has grown and changed. And to be fair, did we want him to just rewrite The Shining? Because we could just reread The Shining and get the same effect. No, we want a different book to find out what happened to these characters. And in that sense, Dr. Sleep works really well. So, if you've read The Shining and you like King's work, definitely check out Dr. Sleep. It is a really enjoyable and just good book. If, however, you think The Shining's the best book ever written, don't read Dr. Sleep, because it clearly won't live up to your expectations because it's an entirely different book. Okay, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to click like, and if you like my content, think about clicking subscribe. If you also like Stephen King, let me know in the comments what you think his best book is. Remember to follow me on Twitter if you'd like to know my opinions about everything all the time, and I'll see you all in the next video about something else at some point in the future. Cheers now, I'll see you soon.